Help us build an Islamic studio at www.islamicstudio.org. Link in the description.
Dear brothers and sisters, when the topic of Qiyamul Layl, the night prayer, comes up outside of Ramadan, it can feel a bit out of touch. It can feel a bit disconnected from people because, let's be very honest, when we look at the state of ourselves collectively, it's hard for us to pray the 5 prayers. We have a struggle with the fara'id, with the mandatory prayers. And so some might say, why talk about Tahajjud? Why talk about the night prayer when people are struggling with the 5 obligatory prayers? And I ask myself that question as well. If someone's struggling with the fara'id, how can they even begin to entertain Qiyamul Layl, to entertain the idea of praying at night? And Ramadan is of course an exception. You find people that, just like people fast Ramadan, that struggle with other obligations in the deen, and we ask Allah to make Ramadan, the fasting of Ramadan, a means for them to fulfill the other obligations. But just as people, can fast Ramadan, but they can't do a lot of those other things throughout the year, in many ways people sort of relegate this practice to this special 10 nights and that's it. And we don't really touch it. And maybe one day my faith will get to the point that I feel connected enough to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I can start to entertain that conversation. And then once I start to dive into the books and I start to read about the way that the Salaf, the way that the pious predecessors viewed Qiyamul Layl seemingly as an obligation, not an obligation in a technical sense, which we'll get to, but as an obligation on themselves for spiritual health, it can be demoralizing and depressing because you read that and you say, where am I? And these people who would blame themselves so much for missing one night of Qiyamul Layl, and I don't remember the last time that I prayed a meaningful night. But most, when you talk about coming close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is true that مَا تَقَرَّبْ إِلَيَّ عَبْدِي بِشَيْءٍ that no طَرَدْتُهُ عَلَيْهِ than what I have already made obligatory upon them. You can't prioritize the nawafil over the fara'id. You can't prioritize the voluntary deeds over the obligatory deeds. However, if a person tastes the sweetness of certain voluntary deeds, not only can it help them be more consistent with the obligatory deeds, it can help revive the spirit of those obligatory deeds. In fact, which is what Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha said about Surah Al-Muzammil. If you read Surah Al-Muzammil, the 3rd revelation to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is a page and a half. The second half is one ayah. And Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha says that Allah withheld the second part of Al-Muzammil for an entire year from us. Meaning what? When Allah first revealed to us, Ya ayyuha al-Muzammil, qum al-layla illa qalila, nisfahu aw inqus minhu qalila, aw zid alayhi wa rattil al-Qur'ana tartila. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to the Ummah by extension to stand up and pray at night. To stand up and pray a significant portion of the night and to recite a significant portion of what was revealed. Aisha radiallahu anha said, for a year, the obligation upon us was Qiyamul Layl. Meaning Qiyamul Layl, the night prayer, was an obligation on the Ummah for an entire year before the obligation of the 5 prayers came later on. Similar to how we have ayyam and ma'dudat, some days that were obligatory for fasting. But when Ramadan came, they became voluntary, like the fasting of Arafah and Ashura and other days like that. Okay, so with the prayer of Qiyamul Layl, she says that for a whole year, and this was the most difficult time in the life of the Prophet ﷺ and by the Ummah who was facing persecution and had no community, which is one of the wisdoms that the ulama mentioned. They didn't have a community to gather. They had no masjid. They had Dar al-Arqam to sneak into and to study and to do what they could. But everyone really had to pray by themselves. For a whole year, she said, we all prayed until our feet would swell. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the second part of it, which rendered the night prayer voluntary, but the Prophet ﷺ still maintained the habits. Meaning the Prophet ﷺ still would pray until his feet would swell. And of course, many of the companions would maintain that habit. And there was a wisdom to that. That when you are struggling, this practice is not just a means of giving you great perspective and great connection to your Lord, but it also provides a unique level of relief, of hem, of stress and anxiety. And that's something that's very unique about this particular habit, this particular good deed. When you read about it, the way that the companions and the Salaf and the pious predecessors speak about this act in particular as being one that removes stress. Stand up at night, you have a direct connection to your Lord, it's quiet, you don't have a meeting coming up, right? You can create the scene, set the scene. The kids are most likely sleeping, they should be sleeping at that time. It's just you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The rules of Qiyamul Layl are not as rigid, and I don't say that in a negative way, but with the maktuba, with the mandatory prayers, there are certain things you can and can't do, but with the Qiyam, you can spend the whole night with 1 or 2 ayat. You can allocate certain time to your sajda, certain time to your standing up. It's a moment of joy. And when the scholars spoke about it, that's what they say. And it's very interesting because just like with fasting, you always start reading about these studies to try to make you feel better about your faith. And you don't need to, right? The benefits of fasting. It feels good, right? When you hear about the physical benefits and things of that sort as well. Basically, these studies confirming what you already have been acting upon because it was prescribed by your Lord. And so you read these studies about mindfulness meditation. 20 minutes a day. 25 minutes a day. But don't do it all at one time, because you need to break up your mindfulness meditation throughout the day, because it will reset the cycle for you and get you back to where you need to be, and put between those breaks, those meditation breaks, everything in perspective. And it will improve the quality of your sleep. And if you improve the quality of your sleep, then you're energized during the day. And I'm like, these people just need salah. They just need prayer. We have something prescribed to us that is so beautiful. That doesn't mean that times of dua and dhikr and introspection are not good as well, but salah really offers that vehicle and improves the quality of a person's day and a person's night. When you think about the unique stress relief, Abu Sulaiman al-Darani rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, أَهْلُ طَاعَةِ بِلَيْلِهِمْ أَلَذُّ مِنْ أَهْلِ اللَّهْوِ بِلَهْوِهِمْ. People spend the entire night binge watching movies or hanging out, and there are halal ways to spend time as well, right? But there is a certain relaxation. I need some relief tonight, so I'm going to spend some time and I'm going to just kill some time and feel good. And sometimes it's halal, it's good for you. But what he was saying is, Ahlul Ta'a, that people who have established this night prayer, even if it's a small portion, that they are in more joy than the people of lahu with their lahu. Now we're not even talking about people of sin, right? That's a whole nother level. And he said, describing it, he says, وَرُبَّمَا رَأَيْتُ الْقَلْبَ يَضْحِكُ ضَاحِكًا. He said, it's as if I could see my heart laughing when a person enjoys that night of prayer. He said, لَوْلَا قِيَامُ اللَّيْلِ مَا أَحْبَبْتُ الْبَقَاءَ فِي الدُّنْيَا. He said, had it not been for Qiyam al-Layl, I really wouldn't see any use in living in this life. I don't think about anything in life as giving me as much joy as I do Qiyam al-Layl. Thabit al-Bunani radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he used to say, مَا شَيْءٍ أَجِدُهُ فِي قَلْبِي أَلَذُّ عِنْدِي مِنْ قِيَامِ اللَّيْل. I have not found anything in my life that is just sweeter, gives more pleasure. That's how they're speaking about it. Then Qiyam al-Layl. Al-Fudayl rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, أَفْرَحُ بِاللَّيْلِ لِمُنَاجَاتِ رَبِّي وَأَكْرَهُ النَّهَارَ لِلِقَاءِ خَلْقِ اللَّهِ. He said that I love the night prayer, or I love the night because that's when I get to meet my Lord. That's when I get to spend time with Allah. And we were talking about the last few weeks, how people can be exhausting. He said, in the daytime, I'm not so crazy about because I have to meet the creation of Allah. Dealing with the Lord at night, dealing with people during the day, there is a peace and a tranquility that comes from that makes what comes throughout the day more bearable. And that joy is freshening. That joy is replenishing. That joy is meaningful. It's, people are searching for it here and there. And it's in those few moments at night. And I'm going to get to this at the end, but that doesn't mean praying all night. That means those few moments, that 10, 15 minutes, that 20 minutes of recalibrating every single night at some point in the night between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Imam Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah ta'ala, he was asked, مَا بَالُ الْمُتَهَجِّدِينَ بِاللَّيْلِ مِنْ أَحْسَنِ النَّاسِ وُجُوهًا. He said, how come the people that sleep the least at night have the freshest faces during, they're energized? قَالَ لِأَنَّهُمْ خَلَوْا بِالرَّحْمَنِ فَأَلْبَسَهُمْ مِنْ نُورِهِ. SubhanAllah. He said, because they spent the night in seclusion with the most merciful. So Allah dressed them with His light.
My beloved brothers and sisters, pray Tahajjud, wake up at night and pray the Qiyamul Layl. You will understand how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will change your life in a better way. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will beautify your life. Tahajjud has a sweetness. Tahajjud will bring noor in your face. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will enlighten your face when you pray Tahajjud. Tahajjud is a prayer which connects you with your Lord, which shows you your love for your Lord. So pray Tahajjud, wake up at night and cry to Allah, recite Quran, pray 2 units of prayer, and you can pray it multiple times and see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers your du'as, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala solves your problems, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases your honor, respect. My dear brothers and sisters, we all have sinned. We are sinners. The best of sinners are those who remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My dear brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to come closer to Him, and Tahajjud will bring you closer to Him. Dua made during the time of Tahajjud is like an arrow hitting its target. So anything you need, ask Allah at this time, at the last third of the night. Every night Allah subhanahu comes down to the lowest heaven during the time of Tahajjud to answer your prayers. But the question is, are we waking up and praying to Him during that time? My beloved brothers and sisters, Tahajjud will remove your stress from your life. Tahajjud will decorate your life with mercy and blessings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you such a sweetness in Tahajjud that when it is the time of Tahajjud, you will automatically wake up, sometimes even without an alarm clock. So practice Tahajjud and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whatever you want and whatever you need during this time of the night.
Help us build an Islamic studio at www.islamicstudio.org. Link in the description.
That the self, the way that is viewed sometimes and oblique not the teaching since which will get but as an temple for health in can be demoralizing and desperation because you read that and you say where am I, and those people who all blame Trump so much for missing on night off, and I don't remember the last time prayed to night for most when you talk about coming close to Allah. Subhanallah, it is true that then what I have already made up them you can't provide the over the you can't provide limitation over the obliques David or if a person takes the of correction not only can them be more with the obedience dates it can help remove the traps and faced when what side about if you read the tide relation to the it is page and half the sound half of is and said that Allah withheld the second part of form and another years from use, meeting what who Allah first remember use. Allah to the Prophet and the night step up and pray for night sight for years. The oblique upload use was Quran. The night praying was an obligation on the from intent year before the obligations of the 5 prayers came later on, similar to how we have some days that were obligate that we had for fasting, but when Ramadan came, they became like the fasting and